Good afternoon, everyone. And on behalf of New York Encounter, welcome. I'm Hannah Chesterton. I'm Assistant Professor of Criminology at the Catholic University of America, and I'm really happy to be moderating this event today. So I'm going to start by reading and telling you about Father Zach and our other guest, who will be joining from a recorded interview. So I was able to go and meet him, and we were able to record our conversation. And then we'll watch that video. So firstly, Leo Schofield, who some of you maybe attended the Gilbert King event last year. So I was able to meet Leo. Let me tell you a bit about him. He was born in Massachusetts in 1965 and moved with his family to Lakeland, Florida in the early 1980s. In 1986, he married Michelle Sam, who was tragically killed the following year. In 1989, Leo was convicted of her murder, and despite being offered plea deals that could have secured his release decades earlier, Leo has steadfastly maintained his innocence. While incarcerated, he earned multiple college degrees and became a pastor, devoting his time to education and ministry. In 2022, Leo's case became the focus of Pulitzer Prize-winning author Gilbert King's narrative podcast, Bone Valley, and perhaps some of you have listened to it. It's quite extraordinary. The podcast concluded that Leo had been wrongfully convicted of Michelle's murder and pointed to another man who lived nearby as the perpetrator, a man who has since confessed to the crime. Bone Valley received worldwide critical acclaim, garnering over 10 million downloads, and ultimately contributed to Leo's release on parole in 2024. His story is now being developed into a dramatic multi-season television series. Leo Schofield Jr. currently lives in Tampa, Florida with his wife of 29 years, Chrissy Carter Schofield. So to my left here is Father Zachariah Presutti, who is the founder and the executive director of Thrive for Life Prison Project, a Catholic ministry dedicated to transforming lives behind and beyond prison walls. Under his leadership, Thrive for Life, in partnership with several universities and technical schools, manages the only houses of studies for formerly incarcerated men continuing their education. These are Abraham House, Ignacio House, and Joseph House. Residents receive tailored supportive services as they begin their re-entry journeys. Over the coming months, Thrive for Life has plans to continue its national expansion, with planned houses of study in New England, Baltimore, and the American South. A licensed social worker, Father Zach received a Master of Social Work from St. Louis University and a Master of Divinity from the Jesuit School of Theology. In addition to his role as Thrive for Life's executive director, Father Zach also serves as the Catholic chaplain at Rikers Island, where he ministers to people in new admissions and punitive segregation. And you can find his full bio online. So unfortunately, Leo planned to be here with his wife, Chrissy, and they weren't able to come because Leo and his daughter, Ashley, were in a very serious accident that was quite close to his home and suffered very serious injuries. He's only recently left hospital with several injuries, including both broken wrists and a broken foot. Leo and his wife, they really wanted to share with us. They were adamant about that. So Joe and I met them last Sunday in their home in Tampa and recorded a conversation about his life experiences and his faith. So Leo he's extraordinary. And it really was a privilege to meet him, to spend time with him. Chrissy and Leo were so welcoming. And what struck me was hope emanated from him. And he shared so openly with us, and he really seemed to genuinely care for us and connect with us. So let's watch that dialogue together. So I'm here with Leo and Chrissy Schofield for the New York Encounter 2025. Leo, thank you for having us here. And with everything that's going on, speaking with us, can you tell us a bit about what's been happening the last few weeks?
The last few weeks? Well, obviously, I've had my Evel Knievel experience with my motorcycle. And about 3 weeks ago, my daughter and I were riding to Home Depot on a motorcycle, and we were in a crash, and we got broken up pretty good. So I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it to New York, because we were really looking forward to that trip there. But that explains why I'm all casted up and stuff like that. But this is all just part of my life story. Just building another chapter in a long book of catastrophes.
Yeah.
Hope.
How have you sustained hope and not fallen into despair and resentment after all these years?
Well, I'm assuming you know the story of my prison encounter and being in prison for 36 years for a crime I didn't commit. As I was sharing with you earlier on, my story through hope and faith is a linear line that begins at a certain point. I've always been a believer in God most of my life. And when this happened, when the prison experience happened back in 1989, I kind of lost sight of that. I didn't understand why God could allow something like that to happen to me. And so I entered into the prison expecting that this would be made right some kind of way, that right would right itself, that justice is not going to allow for somebody to be wrongfully convicted and stay in prison. And after I'd been there for 3 months, waiting on the outside, reading the papers, talking to my family, and being engaged in things on the outside of prison, an old convict that was in there had gotten my attention one day, and he said to me, "Youngster, if you don't get your head on this side of the fence, someone's going to cut it off for you." And for whatever reason, that really hit home with me. It just did. And then that night I laid in my bed and I covered my head with my sheet and I cried. And the next day I woke up, I was a different person. I was fully engaged in the prison life. And so the line continues, working on my own strength to get through it. I want to say that my character, my inner character, who I am as a person sustained me for a certain length of time against the pressures of prison that try to mold you into certain roles, or the oppression of prison, which tries to sap all of your hope and your strength. And I didn't have that kind of character. And thankfully, ironically, I was young back then. And so that too sustained me. Yeah. But there came a time where I couldn't keep doing it like that. I couldn't do it on my own strength. And by that time, I had met my wife. In fact, we had been together for a few years when I finally stopped running from God and stopped blaming God for, my position in life and what was going on. And I just entrusted it to him to make something of it, help me to get through it, whatever it was that he wanted to do. And, that was a funny story too, how I come to faith that way. If I can just tell you this, my wife and I were sitting in the visiting park one day, and we had shared, when I met my wife, she was into kind of the New Age movement with Shakti Gawain and living in the light and, that kind of thing. And I was running from God. I wasn't really in the faith. And so it was easy to get involved in that with her as well. And that served us really well. Honestly, it really did. But we were sitting in the visiting park one day, and a guy went by holding a Bible in his hand. And for whatever reason, Chrissy said, "If you ever become one of those Bible thumping fools, I'll leave you." And I looked at her and I said, "Why would you say something like that?" And then it was only a few weeks after that I had my moment where I was just despaired so bad that I knew I needed to come home to God. And so a friend of mine prayed with me. And my prayer that day was, I need you. and I want to surrender my life to you. And what I actually said was, but you heard what that wife of mine said, and I can't lose another wife. So if you want me, you've got to take her too. And that was the prayer I prayed. And then for the next couple of weeks, I was trying to tell her. But I was scared to death to tell her because she was going to leave me. And then it was like 2 weeks of trying to say something to her about it and bring it up. And then she finally said, "Are you trying to tell me you're a Christian?" And I said, wow. Yeah. And I said, wow. I said, yeah, I guess that's what I'm trying to tell you. And, she just thought about it for a minute and she asked, well, what does that mean for me? And I told her about the prayer. I told her that I can't do it without her, that I told God that I won't go without her. And so she was agreeable to that. And we were sitting facing each other, knees to knees. And I held her hands and we were getting ready to pray. I was going to pray for my wife, the first person I ever prayed for as a faithful believer. And in prison, you're not allowed to sit like that. So as we started to pray, an officer came over to us and was getting ready to say something about us sitting like that. And before he could say anything, I said, "You must be the devil, because only the devil would be coming over here right now to separate what's fixing to happen here." And he said, "Nope, that's not me, Leo." And he turned away and walked away. And so that day I prayed and both of us became believers, following God. Wow. And then he gave us the strength. He gave us not just the strength, but the purpose and a mission while I was in. And it was slow building, as it should have been. We're talking 36 years of incarceration. And so at that point where her and I prayed, I was probably 10 years in then. And from that point forward, it was an experience one after the other. And I won't tell you it was glorious every day. There were very many down times and things that challenge you in prison. But with that faith and with the mission, and soon I found myself in leadership roles within the community of prison inside, helping other broken men to find faith. And then he transferred me to Hardy. I transferred to Hardy, and I spent a lot of time there and went to seminary, finished seminary with my degree in Christian ministry. And I became one of the first sanctioned inmate pastors inside the prison. And I was leading a Christian community of maybe 125. There were other groups that had graduated with me that had ministries as well.
And is this where you had the war room? Can you tell us about the war room?
Yes, this is exactly where the war room was at. And so as time was going on and all this, and this is just how God works. This is how hope is fostered within you, because hope is a word that's hard to define, right? It's something that we possess inside of ourselves. I believe it's having an assurance or a confidence that something that we need or want or desire is going to happen based on your faith in doing what God wants you to do. And so I think I always believed that, but Chrissy can tell you that the things that happen, we could not have foreseen those things happening. There's no way that we could have planned, but it became very obvious that God was with us. And so while I was in seminary, seminary was done by New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. It was a pilot group that started at Hardy. I was in the inaugural class. They built an entire classroom, a study hall, a major library, 2 different places of smaller classrooms to study, and 1 war room. The war room was kind of our idea, and it was a place of prayer. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, The War Room, but there's a movie called The War Room. Okay. And that's where you go to do spiritual warfare. And we had a couple of kneelers in there from the carpentry class. And you could go in that it's just a little closet, and you could go in there and hang a a sticker on the board, on the corkboard with a prayer request, and others that would go in and pray. They could pray for all the things that are in there. It was my favorite room in the entire building. It was a really special place. And I spent a lot of time going in there and praying. Well, at one point during this time, I think it was my second year of seminary, we got a confession from the real killer. Yep. And his name was Jeremy Scott. And, that was, we knew he was linked to the crime years before that through fingerprint evidence, but this was the first time that he confessed. And I can't even begin to tell you what that meant for me personally, how that felt personally. The mantle of a murderer was lifted off my shoulders because it never belonged there, but I had to carry it for a lot of years. And when he confessed, I had a lot of mixed emotions about that. One, I was relieved that finally the truth would be known. Yeah. I was excited thinking that surely this was going to be the end of my prison stay, which it obviously was not. But so I was joyful about that. At the same time, quite honestly, I was very angry, to now know, to put a face to who actually committed the crime. Yeah. And this wasn't just any crime. This was a crime against my wife. And so I had a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions about that. And by then, I had already been pastoring my community since 2011. And I've been telling men in every sermon that if we give ourselves to God, we give these weighty issues to God and trust Him, that we'll get through it. He'll see us through it. The Bible says that God can work out all things for the good for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. And so I stood by that. I even wrote a song about that. And I've been telling the men that for years. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, I have to stand on my own words. And I didn't want to. I wanted to act out, and I was angry. And so I went in the war room one day in 2016. Remarkable story. It was on a Wednesday, and I went in there and I prayed and I talked to God about it. And I said, I know you want me to forgive him. I know that's what you want me to do. I understand the concept. I need to be forgiven. And so I told God, I'm going to forgive him. I'm going to make that choice. And Hannah, I made that choice because that's who I am. That's my character. Yeah. It's not my character to hurt someone else. Yeah. And so following my own nature, I said to God, I forgive him. Now you know I'm lying because you're God. That's right. Really what happened. Yeah. But I said, I'm going to keep coming in here every day and praying and forgiving him until you make it real in my life, and ask God to make it real for me. And that's what I did. And it took some time, but in time, I truly have forgiven him. Wow. You know, I don't think we could ever be friends per se. I don't know, but I see him now as a creature of God, someone who needs God himself. And there's a remarkable story about his part of this story, but he did make it real for me. And I have forgiven him. I hold no bitterness in my heart toward Jeremy. And I was freed by that. Yeah. You know, I was truly freed by that, because I think if I didn't do that, I'd have been burdened by a lot of hatred and a lot of anger and a lot of pent-up frustration that I could do nothing with according to my nature. Yeah. And so this was the right decision for me.
It's remarkable.
It is, and that's the story of the war room. And I'm glad you asked about that, because that is the story. God is the center of everything that's happening with me. Yeah. So, and not everybody wants to tell that part of the story. So I was very excited to be invited to speak.
Oh, yeah. Well, I would hear of it, a few times, a few references, and I kept thinking, wait, I want to hear about that room and what happened in that room and how you kind of battled, right? And
you have to. You can't give up.
Yeah.
You can't expect immediate results. I mean, there was something about it even on the first day, that the first time I prayed, where I came out of the war room, that I was a little lighter about it.
Wow.
You know, and I think it was just that I had a sense of purpose in it, that there was a mission in front of me. You know, and once I had the goal set, I knew what I was doing. There was no turning away from it.
Wow.
But you have to be consistent and persistent in following through with those kinds of things.
Yes.
You know, and that's how you get through it.
Yes. And your story of resilience and persistence is really moving, and thank you for sharing with us.
No, thank you for allowing me to share.
Well, I'm excited to hear about what's your future, what's your present. Things have been happening for you. Yeah. So when I first got out of prison, I was very blessed by someone who gave me a job when I first got out, without questioning the prison thing, which, as you can imagine, it's probably hard for guys getting out of prison on parole to get jobs. Terry Foster gave me a job as a mechanic trainee at his auto shop, and I stayed there for a few months, and I'm very appreciative of that, because everything that you see around me here is as a result of being able to work there, and combining my job and with my wife's, we were able to make some changes in our lives. And I think for me, honestly, Hannah, I hit the ground running a little bit too fast. I was going 90 miles an hour north, and I needed to slow down. I was working 55 hours a week, and it was a lot. Yeah. But in the course of time, me being out here, I met some friends that are in the Christian community that were really special to us. And provided different opportunities. And so at the time of this accident, I was in my second week of my 2-week notice at the shop, and getting ready to take a ministry role with a church in Tierra Verde. Oh, wow. And I was very much excited about that. It was less pay, quite a bit, actually. But there was another church in Clearwater that was also offering, some work. And it's in line with my degree, what I went to school for. Yeah. And I was very much looking forward to that. I still am. All that's put on hold, but still available. Okay. And so I'm excited about where we might go going forward. And we'll just have to see. This was a little bit of a setback, but this was the way that and I always say this: God doesn't do these things to us. He didn't put me in a motorcycle crash to slow me down. Yeah. But again, he uses all things for the good. And so, this happened. It definitely slowed me down. I remember telling Christy in the hospital, I was actually excited a little bit, because now I can rest. I can slow down. I can, get my life in order and figure out where I'm going next. And so we're excited. We're excited to heal now, get my daughter healed, and see where we go. Yeah. And that is more of that positivity and grit that you have in being able to see positive is quite extraordinary.
You couldn't live this life without some positivity.
Yeah.
This is tough, but again, it's not us, it's not me. And I want to make sure that we send the right message, that, you hold on to hope, and it's not a blind hope. Mm-hmm. It's a hope in God. Yeah. And God is very real. The hope can't be blind hope. The hope is in a living God who loves and cares for us. Mm-hmm. And when you place your hope in God, no matter what you're going through, he will see you through. He won't see you around it, won't always see you under it or above it, but he can see you through it. And my life is proof of that. Yeah. He has taken me through so many dark places, and the light places are well worth it.
So
Our final question is about your relationship and your love for one another. And you can't help listening to the podcast and wondering, who is this incredible, tenacious Chrissy? And so thank you for joining us. So Leo, who and what is Chrissy to you? And then Chrissy, who and what is Leo to you?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that question and described my wife with the word tenacious. That's kind of the first time I've ever heard anybody use that particular word. She is extremely tenacious, but I want to say, God gives you what you need when you need it. And so, like 3 years into my prison sentence, he introduced me to Chrissy, and that's a story in and of itself. It's worthy of being told. But I can tell you that I needed her at that time to get me where I am today. And she's been with me through it every minute. And without her, I would not have made it through it all. Hope, faith, whatever. He gave me a partner to endure, to share the hope, share the sadness. And she's been with me ever since. And, obviously she's beautiful, and, we get along really well, and she's very fun. And I just could not have made it. She is the hero of my story. She really is. And, I know she hates hearing that, and she's gotten a lot of attention from the Bone Valley podcast, but it's all true. If it wasn't for her, I would not be here. And that's an obvious fact. And that's what she is to me. So what I am to you, pain in the butt.
He has taught me the definition of love, for sure. To understand that love is about giving and about your own, I don't know how to say it. It's not about what you get at all. I've learned that from him. He has always dumped big, big buckets in my love bank. And he's kind of a special
I've always
guy.
withdrawn a bunch of love too.
We both have. But
that's the ebb and flow of the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Just go through things, and we get through them together.
Yeah, we do.
And thank you for asking the question. Thank you for having us here. We appreciate it very much.
It was very special meeting Leo, and we're so grateful for him. It's hard to capture really what it was like in that room, but even though he seems fine, he wasn't. He was in pain, and a few times we had to rearrange his pillows, turn his bed, because it was hard for him to turn his head, and it was difficult for him to talk to us for 25 minutes. And so it was really special. And even though he was in pain, he was really kind, and he was eloquent, and his vitality was very profound. He was very full of life. He has faced so many setbacks, right? So he leaves prison, he finally gets parole, and then this happens, and we saw the Harley Davidson, and it was horrible just looking at the motorbike. It was horrible. And most of us might be disillusioned, might lose hope, but he didn't. And he was it was extraordinary being with him. So thank you, Leo. Okay, so For the rest of this session, we'll be talking with Father Zach and transitioning to your work, your tireless work, your dedication to work with passion and hope in supporting and walking with people who are leaving prison, who are in prison. So thank you for being here. And okay, so my first question for you is, what moment or experience first inspired you to work with people who are incarcerated?
First, let me say that was a very inspiring interview with Leo, so thank you so much for sharing that with us. So, I mean, the short answer really to your question is obedience. I mean, my novice master told me when I was a novice that I was going to be going to work at the Onondaga County Correctional Facility in Syracuse, where I was a novice at the time. And that was really the beginning of me working in prison and working with incarcerated people. And actually, that's all I've ever done as a priest or as a Jesuit, as a religious, is work with people who are incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. So I'm probably facing 25 years to life at the rate I'm going. But the novice master said, you have to go and work in the Onondaga Correctional Facility. And I said, well, I don't think that's probably a good idea because, you know, I joined the Jesuits to teach. And my mother was a teacher, my grandparents were a teacher, and I thought, you know, that's why I joined, was to teach. So I was thinking maybe of teaching at the Holy Cross Grammar School wow. He said, that's the thing you still haven't gotten yet. He said, you're a novice, and he said, you go where I send you. We're not in a conversation here. You will report to the Onondaga County Correctional Facility on Tuesday, and a minivan will pick you up, and you'll be there from 2 to 4. So you'll enjoy it. And that was really the beginning of the entire, my entire life of accompanying people who were incarcerated and formerly incarcerated. Then I came to New York, and I was working at the Tombs, which is closed now, the Manhattan the Manhattan Detention Center, part of the New York City Department of Corrections. It's demolished now, is on Canal and Center. And I was going there week in and week out with a group of people for evenings of reflection with the people who were detained there. And we met this guy, his name was Alex, wonderful guy, still is a wonderful guy, beautiful guy. And he had never been in prison before, and he was facing some serious charges, but he had never been upstate. And I decided to write to the courts, to Judge Nunez, to ask for an alternative to incarceration, to be released into my custody. I would get him a job, and that he could also go to this drug treatment facility in Midtown, Crystal Clear. Well, little did I know that Judge Nunez ended up granting my request to have him released into my custody and for this alternative incarceration. I had the job all lined up, and I had the drug treatment facility that he was going to go to, but I had no place for him to live at all, and we didn't have any guest rooms in the Jesuit community. And so one day I was walking to the gym. I live here in Chelsea, and I was walking to the gym, and there's this convent that's in the area. It'll remain nameless. That I was friendly with, and I knocked on the door, and I asked to talk to Sister Marie Bernadette. She's a wonderful woman, and I had known her for a while. And I told Sister Marie Bernadette, you know, that I was working downtown in the Manhattan Detention Center, and that I had met this guy Alex, who we could offer an alternative to incarceration. I told her, I said, you know, I have a job for him, and also he's going to be going to drug treatment at Crystal Clear. And I said, but we have a really big problem, sister. I said, you know, we don't have any place for him to live. I said, and so this is a problem we really have to face. And she looked at me in the only way she could, and she said, you know what, I think you're using the wrong pronoun. You seem to have a big problem on your hands. I don't have a problem. We don't have a problem. And she said, so thoughts and prayers. The sisters are going to be really keeping you close in prayer. Thanks so much, Zach. Be well. So I left, and I thanked Sister Marie Bernadette for her time. She's a really fantastic woman. Anyway, bakery opened up about 3 weeks later, and so I went and brought baked goods to the sisters and asked to talk to Sister Marie Bernadette. And she said to me, how is everything going with Alex? I said, you know, Fancy, you should ask. I said, he's coming out in a month. And I said, I still don't have a place for him to go. And she said, you know, I just want you to know the sisters admire your work, and we really are, we're praying for you. And I said, well, thank you so much. Well, 3 weeks later, Sister Marie Bernadette called me, and she said to me, remember I told you that we were praying for you? I said, yeah. She said, how's Alex doing? I said, Alex gets out in 2 weeks. I said, I still don't have a place for him. I said, but I think things are going to work out. And she said, I was talking to the sisters, and Alex, he can come live with us. He can, while he's working with you, and he's going to Crystal Clear, he can come working with us. I was overjoyed. I was so thankful to God. And I said, thank you so much, sister. I said, next Tuesday, I'll be getting him from the New York City Department of Corrections. He'll be right over to the convent. And she said, not so fast to get off the phone. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, here's the thing. We're going to do this, and we're happy to do it. We're happy to support you. But if we do this, you're going to become our chaplain, and our masses are at 6:30 Monday through Friday. I'm still their chaplain. Anyway, I tell you that story because it's very important. It was the beginning of us realizing as a ministry, it wasn't enough to be going into the prisons and sharing just how much God loved our brothers and sisters behind the wall, but we had to be church for these folks once they were getting out. And thanks to Cardinal Dolan here in the Archdiocese, he has given me 2 former convents that we've then renovated. So they're houses of studies for people who are highly committed and motivated as they're continuing their education while living in a supportive living community. So here in New York, we have Abraham House and Ignacio House, and out in the Archdiocese of Milwaukee, we have Joseph House.
And Joseph House is relatively new, is that right?
Yes, just a couple weeks, yep.
Wow, okay. And so how has this work changed you? So often we might think of working with people who have been in prison as we go in to help, right? And we go in to rehabilitate. But how has this work impacted you over all these years? How has it enriched your life and surprised you in ways, that you didn't think possible?
Yeah, I mean, I can really say that it goes back to even my time starting out in religious life, the people that I was meeting behind the walls. I can say very, very clearly that the lives that I have met and had the privilege of meeting behind the prison walls have given my own religious life, in the sense that I know why I'm a priest. I know why I stay a priest, because the lives of the people that I've been able to encounter behind the walls have deepened my own faith and certainly deepened my own commitment in the church in a very radical way, something beyond my imagination. I didn't sign up to be a Jesuit to work in prison. And indeed, that's what God has invited me to do, and I am forever grateful. I'm forever grateful.
So my next question, I've got kind of 2 parts to this. So drawing on your experiences, connecting to the theme for today, how can someone heal their relationship with a very difficult past, right? Particularly in prison where the focus is kind of stripping the self, right? And often dehumanizing processes, and people are in survival mode a lot. How do people that you work with heal their relationship with their past, and how do they find hope for the future?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really horrible place. Dirty, dark, dingy. It's terrible. And it really is. And that's the truth of the matter. But, I think the church has a lot, is very important in this discussion, because at the center of what the church is inviting people to is a deeper understanding that we're all created in the likeness and image of God, right? And there's innate value and worth in every single person, despite what you've done or failed to do. We say it right at the beginning of every time we celebrate the Eucharist. We're calling upon God's mercy for the things that we've done or that we've failed to do, and asking for that mercy. And that mercy and that love is there for anyone at any moment of any breath. And that is to say that any time that we choose as human beings to turn our gaze towards that mercy, towards that healing, those are the moments of conversion. I have to tell you, I feel like I've had a front row seat at what God has been doing in people's lives, because the people that I have met in prison, the people that I've been able to journey with coming out of prison, the ways that they have been able to live differently, radically differently, than they ever had before is only a testament to the power of the Holy Spirit.
Can you share one or two stories about that?
Oh, sure. Sure. I'll share
Sorry
one.
to put you on the spot.
One quickly. I was working out in Pelican Bay State Prison, which is the supermax for the Department of Corrections for the state of California in Northern California. And while I was working there, I was giving retreats and the sacramental life of the church in the Catholic population at that prison. And at the end of the day, I was told by the warden that there was somebody in solitary confinement that wanted to see me. So I went, and one of the things that happened while I was there, I encountered this man who had been finishing up a 10-year bid in solitary confinement. And while he was in solitary confinement, he read the autobiography of St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits, my religious community that I'm a part of. And it was through reading that story of that saint, that the saint of the church, that he gave himself over to the Lord, became more intimately involved with the church, the sacramental life of the church, and the sacrament of reconciliation, etc., etc. But here's the most fascinating part of that encounter, which was absolutely radical in and of itself, to meet him and to also be able to share with somebody whose life was also changed by St. Ignatius of Loyola, that after I left the prison, he said, well, where do we go from here? We were just finishing our conversation. I said, well, I'm pretty sure I'm leaving. You're going to be staying right here, I think. And he said, no, I mean, I want to finish this reflection together. Well, anyway, over that last year, we reread the autobiography of St. Ignatius of Loyola, and he wrote letters to me each month and illustrated 13 moments of St. Ignatius's life on the back of manila envelopes that he got in the prison, depicting what his own gospel contemplation and prayer with that moment of St. Ignatius's life had done for him in his own life. So, I mean, the prison walls and cells and barbed wire is no barrier to the love of God and Jesus that is for us. If we really believe that he is the one who's come to make all things new, if he's the Christ, if he's the one that we believe to be a savior, well, if you're in need of a savior, then Christianity is the place for you. And that is a big part of the experience of many people that I've encountered in prison.
So people who are incarcerated and people who are re-entering society are often quite isolated and quite hidden from us. A lot of us don't think about those populations. What can we do? How can we be part of the transformation that you're kind of talking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's very important is like Thrive for Life Prison Project is not just some unique thing that's going on, over here, siloed. I mean, the work of accompanying our brothers and sisters in the prisons is the work of the church.
Yeah.
It's because the Bible tells us this. I mean, Jesus says, when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. So this is the work of the church. And I think that's the most exciting part of it for me, is that we, the body of Christ, are able to, as wounded and as screwed up and as sinful as we are, as I am, somehow, some way, our own sinfulness it pales in comparison to the love that the Lord has for us. And that grace and that blessing unites us in being able to offer a real accompaniment to folks who are quite forgotten. They're just or kind of demonized over the news and in media. But we as a church are able to be church to this population in a very tangential, very, very concrete way. To me, that's very inspiring.
Yeah. Well, we have about a minute left, and I would love for you to fill that minute. So you said something behind the stage. You said that it's not us versus them. Why is it that we often think about the people who are justice involved, people who have been involved in the justice system, we think of them as separate from us? How can we, as people in this room, how can we connect with the dignity of people who have been in the prison system?
I think that if we, at a very deep level, you don't listen to the politics of the American culture and really understand ourselves as companions, as followers of Jesus. That is to say that we all are love sinners. We all have done things, and we have all failed to do something that has ruptured this body, that has ruptured life this side of heaven. And so we all have a responsibility. All of us, the people, have a responsibility to help with the healing and the reconciliation that Jesus has come to show us the way to.
Thank you so much, Father Zach, and thank you for being here and this opportunity.